Paul, we're back. How was your Sky weekend?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Thanks, Fergi. Like somewhere between average and good, which again, as long as I'm treading water, I'm pretty happy at this stage. Um, captain on Saturday, so nice 20-pointer. On Sunday, captain Haaland, so yeah, I was pretty happy. It was at 9 points, doubled
Yeah.
there. Yeah. And then I didn't get burnt as much on the other Brighton players. I do have March. He started. I don't own any of the other Brighton players, so I was relatively happy with the weekend. What about yourself?
Yeah, roughly the same. Canate was a bit of a pain, wasn't he, in the end? I think did he get the tackle bonus in the end? Yeah, he
Yeah,
did,
yeah, and it was one, and
thankfully.
they refreshed the pass count overnight, and he was one short, and so was
Oh,
Trippier.
no, really? One short on
Yeah.
both. Unbelievable. Yeah, very, very similar. Captain Dunk, Captain Haaland, got Madison for this evening. Yeah, just not much to shout about, really. Ranked fourth. Just have a quick look at the leaderboard, actually. I'm joint fourth with David Baxter. There's a 10-point gap then to John Ashworth in sixth. So there's a little, I say a gap. It's not big, right? Obviously, but there's a bit of a gap now with the top five. We're 13 points behind your third team, who are 4 points behind Dale Pointer, who is 17 points behind you. So there's 33 points between first and fifth, which is obviously not a lot of points considering how many games there are still to come and stuff. So yeah, kind of happy. I kind of hovering between fourth and sixth at the moment, just because I'm in that little cluster where we've got same point every time something happens. We shift around, but kind of happy still just to kind of hold, not blow my beans too early, I suppose.
It feels like at least 6 or 7 of the teams in the top 10 are either identical or very, very similar, right?
It
Like,
it does, yeah. I think so. Like looking at the gaps between the points, they all like I say. I think there's a couple of teams who have some minor differences, but the gaps in the points are, the table isn't flip flopping massively, is it? It's kind of staying reasonably steady with just the odd
yeah.
2 or 3 places going. So yeah, it's a very template period at the moment, and it's going to be interesting to see who blinks first.
Especially on the captaincy front, because like I've enjoyed the fact that I've not had to worry about picking the captain. Because for me, anyway, the way that I like to play the game, it was pretty obvious who I was going to captain in each of the instances. And looking, we're going to talk about fixtures coming up just now. 17 calendar days of games left, and Man City play 6 times. So as long as Haaland's playing in those 6 games, I'll only need to worry about 11
11, yeah,
captaincies
that's
then.
right.
Outside of that.
That's right. You had some musings from the weekend, Paul, to start with.
Yeah, and this was just so I've always got like a rough plan running in my head about what I'm going to do, and it was actually Ian Parent's question that I saw come through earlier on that I hadn't. I usually send you over a couple of things to update slides with, and I hadn't done anything. And Ian Parent's question inspired me to do something. So what did I take away from the weekend, and how what's changed from what I was thinking before the weekend? So got a slide up for those that are listening with pictures of John Stones, Alexander Isak, and Steele from Brighton. So Stones was somebody I was really, really interested in getting in, and I'm kind of cooling on that slightly now. And I think it's that new role that he's playing,
Yeah.
but there seems to be players around him constantly when he's going in and playing that double pivot with Rodri. Rodri looks like he's always a spare man. I just think Stones will struggle for a passing bonus. Now, from the defensive assets, I think he's the standout option at set pieces. He's really good at attacking set pieces. I think he's a fantastic player as well. I said on last week's pod. I just now, yeah, I think I'm cooling a little bit based on the fact that he's not guaranteed to start on like 5 points from picking up passing bonus.
I think the last 2 games he's had like roughly 44, 45 sort of pass down. So it's not even like he's like 58 or 59, is he, and stuff. So he, as you say, even though he's playing a vital role in the team, he's not really doing it for Sky.
They're saying that like West Ham and Leeds are 2 of the worst teams for giving up possession,
Yeah.
Which is strange to say about Leeds, because under Bielsa, they dominated the ball against everyone, and I think City had struggled to get passing bonus against them previously. But So he might still pick up in the next two, but yeah, I'm just cooling on him a little bit. And if I was to go with City defensive assets, I'd probably be looking at Diaz or Kanji now. I think, pending some news on Ake.
I was going to say
back.
Ake's the one, isn't he? Because I think if Ake, I think the back four is, well, 3 of the 4 reasonably settled. But when Ake was there, I don't know. There's just got so many options and so many games at a short space of time.
Yeah.
Champions League semi-finals and stuff. I think it's going to be really hard to predict the teams, particularly if they more or less, and they could, right, win the league in the next 3 or 4 games. If Arsenal's, if they, assuming they're going to win their game in hand, and then Arsenal drop a few more points, lose a couple more games, it could all be done by game week, 37 or 36.
It's really interesting because there's 2 ways that, depending on what side of the coin you land on, you can think about it 2 different ways. One, there's going to be mass rotation because of that. And I think that one of the questions came in was about Alvarez and do we think he'll get a lot more game time and that Haaland might get rested? But Pep doesn't rest people for the sake of resting people. He also does the momentum game. And we know from previous seasons when City's went on like juggernaut runs at the end of the season, and it's been the same team. Like, remember that the season that had the back four was Zinchenko, Laporte, Diaz, probably Walker, or Cancelo, can't remember which one of the 2. And they played, I think, for like 5 or 6 games consistently, maybe with minor changes. And that was, they were playing weekend, midweek with other options that they could rotate. So it is going to be tricky with the City defenders, and even though they've got like the volume of fixtures. But anyway, Stone. I've cooled on Stones slightly. That I had him earmarked to bring in. Definitely, I'm not saying I'm definitely not going to bring him in, but it has cooled. I have cooled on him slightly, and similar with Alexander Isak. And I think it's with Longstaff being out for Newcastle. Obviously, how changed things at half time yesterday, and I've got a feeling that whilst he hasn't been keen to play Isak and Wilson together, that he might change it up now on that basis. But Longstaff being out, they have to change the way that they play, change their system slightly. Isak went more out wide and Wilson went through the middle. Does that make Wilson more viable? Probably, but again, do I want to be picking up players that aren't going to play 90 minutes? Newcastle's a wild card for me in the running, and I say that the 3 prominent teams that, if I had an abundance of transfers that I'd be targeting based on fixture volume, City, United and Brighton. But Newcastle's a wild card, and it's because they've got 2 single game days.
Yeah.
And therefore you can really pick a differential if you're going to go there. But if you're picking a player that you want to be as a differential as a captain twice, then there's no guarantee that Isak or Wilson will play both of those games.
That home to Leicester game on Monday the 22nd could be fantastic, assuming Newcastle, assuming the current form of both teams, because if Wilson starts, for example, that could be a season changer, right? It really could be. Maybe not so much the Brighton game, but that Leicester game could be incredible.
So I've cooled on Isak slightly as well. I didn't have loose plans for him, but I've got spare transfers that I'm thinking about how and when to use them as a rough plan without kind of penning myself in. Yeah. Again, slightly cooled on him. And then Steele, I actually think that if I was looking for a goalkeeper to move on to now, I think I'd pick Steele over everyone.
Wow, okay.
Volume of fixtures, even if there's a sentimental Sanchez comes in the last day of the season, Steele equals then the volume of games. They've got 7 left to play, whereas City and United have got 6 left to play. And I just think with the saving there, getting someone in defence that's more nailed, like Diaz over a Stones or an Akanji, that I think will play every game, maybe bar one resting, perhaps. I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert on picking City lineups or anticipating it, but I think that Steele would be the goalkeeper that I would go to now.
Good stuff. Really interesting stuff, Paul. Just before we move on, let's say hello to everyone in the chat. Windy is in. To skipper or to skip to skip it or to skip? That is the question. Obviously, talking about James Maddison. Not James Maddison specifically, Leicester and Everton, but we will touch on that in a minute. Jason Harry is in up to 22nd. Very, very well done there, Jason. Graham Craig asks about holding Van Dijk. I would certainly be holding Van Dijk in the short term. They have two games coming up soon, two home games, and which is a 2-for-1 over most. So absolutely leaving Van Dijk for the time being. Julian Wardler's in. Johnny White, Matt Scarfaff, Ian Parrin, John A. Conley, Ollie Poole. Ian asks, is this the key day week of the season? Again, we'll touch on Leicester and Everton in a bit. Martin Brown says, hello all, first time listening live. Great to have you with us, Martin. Glenn Murray, Scott Bailey, Dale Turner, Dave Hannigan, and Johnny White. Welcome one and welcome all. Quick look at the remaining fixture schedule. So we just kind of touched on this now, just looking at the games left. As Paul alluded to, Brighton have now got 7 games left. The first one is on Thursday, and then they have that real cluster of games. They're going to have a 7. They're going to have 7 where their closest rivals are going to have like 5 or 6 in terms of fixtures left. So they've really got so many fixtures left. Brighton, to your point about Steele there, Paul. Man City have got 6 starting Wednesday. Chelsea have got 6. I'm not really sure. Maybe Enzo aside. There's many options for Chelsea. Man United also have 6 starting from Thursday. And then looking at teams, we've got 5. Liverpool got 5. Leicester and Everton both play tonight. Arsenal have got 5. They play tomorrow night against Chelsea. West Ham, Newcastle, you touched on, Paul, as well there, and Fulham and Newcastle are not playing until next Sunday, which is the reason I was tempered by the kind of Isak thing last week, because they did have the 2 fixtures, but then they had that big gap, and they have got a fairly big gap now. They don't play till Sunday, and that's against Arsenal as well. So so a fair few teams play twice before that time. Any kind of observations, Paul, on the fixtures left, on how they're falling, how they're landing?
Yeah, I think covered it quite a bit there. I just don't know that I'd be using a transfer on it, like, unless I had like in the teens. I don't know that I'd be using any transfers on any of those players outside of who I've suggested. I don't even think that there's a standout captaincy day other than those kind of Newcastle ones where there's a few options. I had mentioned before Saturday the 13th as being an option, but Marcus Rashford seemed to come back really well from his injury in terms of playing on the front foot again. So I get like he looks like the standout option on that day now, when I didn't think that there was one before.
Yeah, no.
Fergi, I've got an observation, a quiz question that you absolutely hate. So I'm going to do it.
I love being put on the spot as well. It's the best. Go on.
Who's this player?
Oh.
2 points, 2 points, 1 point, 1 point, 5 points, 2 points, 10 points, 2 points, 2 points, 3 points, 2 points, 2 points, 2 points. Very, very popular player.
What were the last 3 scores? Sorry, 2-2-2.
2-2-2.
Oh, flipping heck.
His last
I know who it is. Kieran Trippier.
Yeah. And remember, like, I'm not one for bringing up something I said, because I know that I've said a lot of things that haven't paid off. But remember, I said that he wasn't a good Sky asset. Like, he wasn't a premium. He wasn't a premium Sky asset. That's been his run, which there's not been many teams keeping clean sheets. So if you moved off and moved on to somebody else, it's likely that you haven't made massive gains. Yeah. But
I think that's the reason I'm leaving him in. Is who'd you move him on to? There's just not many obviously players like Dunk, but I don't know, outside of Dunk, I'm not even sure who I'd really want. There's not a massive, like maybe Van Dijk, right? But my budget doesn't allow for him, and Trent. There's not many others who I would think, he's nailed on. Like Dunk is the one, right? Gets the passes all the time, got the goal threat, got the fixtures, plays for the good team. Outside of that, it's tough, and that's why I've left him in, because there's no obvious replacement. So I'm quite happy to leave him at the moment until something, like I always kind of think, unless a really obvious opportunity comes up, I'm happy to leave him because of his price as well. If he was like 9 million, I think there is the argument to move him on. But 7.9, who you're going to get, especially just like a 3 at the back as well, because there's obviously there's Brighton mids. If you're stuck at 3 at the back like I am, who do I go to?
Yeah, I'm definitely not suggesting get rid of him, but for that reason that hardly anyone's keeping clean sheets. I think out of the 8 games that they've been played this game week so far, only been 2 clean sheets in that. From Brighton and Man United. But I'd said before, I was like, I don't like, he's not someone that starts on 5 points. So
that's right. Absolutely.
In that run, you're not getting 5s and such like. And you could argue, like, I think it was his cross that Botman headed into Walcott yesterday as well. So Newcastle have been a little bit unlucky not to keep another clean sheet over that period.
Jason Harry says, last time I moved out Trippier, he banged in a free kick against City and got a clean sheet. Brilliant. Let's have a look at the latest. Oh, I haven't got it up. Oh, no, I didn't put it in. I was going to say the latest transfers remaining. It
was a slide previous to the one that you're currently on.
Yeah, no, it's not popped in for some reason. Let me just have a quick look, so make sure.
So, you want me? I can verbally say it.
Please do.
That'll cover our audio and visually. So top 10 was 8.2 and that moved down to 5.4. Top 100 was 7.7, that's moved down to 5. Top 1000 is 8 down to 5.3, and then 7.8 down to 5.6 for the top 5,000. So all brackets are now between 5 and 5.6.
But that is mental. That is like, what's that? Like a 40% reduction in transfer count in 1 week. Was it really that obvious, these moves? It's crazy.
I think it was everyone coming off the Arsenal players. Remember, they had like an effective ownership of over 4 players per team. Wow. And again, most brackets, I think.
And do you think there were many made on the weekend? So obviously these, I think a fairly obvious move this weekend was maybe if you're holding Raya, maybe move him on to either, I don't know, De Gea or Alisson or Edison or something like that.
So I've been keeping an eye on like the top of the leaderboard to see what moves people are doing, and then having a quick glance intra game now that Sky offer the ability to see what the league standings are. And I think that 8 people in the top 10 now have Ederson and goals.
Oh wow!
It was obvious when he got booked because the -1 came in, and you saw like, and I saw everyone go down 1 point on there as well. So, and I don't think anyone had him before. Perhaps one person or so had him. So it looked like Raya to Ederson was incredibly popular at the weekend there. So that's another 0.8
transfer down. Yeah,
that's another 0.8 off that. Those that don't have Maddison, will they be making moves to bring in Maddison or a Leicester player tonight? What's your thoughts on like couple of questions, Fergi, on like Leicester and Maddison? So Maddison's at 27% top 1,000 just now. What do you think after today's? We got the Rashford one completely. Both of us got the Rashford one completely wrong.
What did he end up? It was high, wasn't it? Was it like 70?
Yeah, 67% or something like that. So it was pretty big. And both of you and I both thought it could be 40, 45-ish.
I think Maddison, because he's such a good player. He obviously got the assist last week, and Everton are incredibly poor. And I think people high up in the rankings probably, I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but I think people can't afford almost not to do it because he only needs like a goal and a bit of shot bonus. If you remember what he did in the single game day in the first half of the season, we got like an 18-pointer. That ruined many people's whole seasons. So I've got him, but if I didn't have him, I would be bringing him in because I think
what transfer volume left you as a player would you not do the move?
Looking at how reasonably straightforward it is to navigate the rest of the season, I think if you maybe like, I personally think it's such a defining day because you can cover every other game day this season, right? So we talked about this day, didn't we, weeks back, about the one game which would be hard to cover. But every other day, it's very likely that someone will have a player So I personally think like maybe 3.
If you had 3 left, you would bring them in.
4. 4 left. 4 to go down to 3. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
I reckon 4 down to 3.
Because it's likely that you're going to move them back out, like not if not straight away, very close to.
Yeah, that's why 4 to 3, not 3 to 2. Yeah, because you're probably gonna it'd be similar to that Salah one you did. Sorry, the Salah one we did a few weeks back, where you just hopped off and I kind of went on again. And if it was probably Everton or Leeds, if it was a harder fixture, I think you can skip it. But they're just awful, aren't they? This is just my take now. What do you think on how the match is going to play out?
I think maybe like 50% alone them, and I think
it'll be higher.
You think so?
I think it'd be like 60, 65 personally. Okay. Yeah.
And I think, the reason why I think it'll be 50-ish is because if I was chasing and I had it doesn't matter about your transfer volume. It matters in the same vein as what we've just said there, but it doesn't matter if you've got more or less if you're bringing in a player, because you're likely going to hop off them again. And I think if I was chasing, I would probably do Barnes or Vardy over them.
Yeah.
I
think it's a good shout. Yeah.
If I was heavy chasing, I would do one of those two over Maddison. But if I was looking to consolidate rank, or knowing that I'm happy with the future moves I've got planned, and I don't want to kill my season today, I'll go with Maddison for the reasons that I normally make transfers and pick players for captaincy.
And Jason Harry makes a good point in the chat. He said, I'm doing the Maddison move tonight, but only because I want to move on to another Brighton asset in Solly Marsh. Doing a daisy chain makes it more viable. So he's got 3, be going down to 2. But yeah, I don't know. I just think we're an awful game not to own anyone. If he does kick off, it can swing you down the rankings so much.
It makes it much easier if you've got a player that you want out,
exactly,
and you're going to
exactly
on. Then absolutely,
yeah.
I think that most, like when I was saying about like most people having a very similar team up the top now, it feels like the majority of the team is going to be players that play for the rest of this week, or players that you want to hold to the rest of the season, and you're going to have to get back in.
Yeah, I agree.
Which makes that slightly more difficult. But
I don't know. I think the only way, like, if you're not doing it, and you're at the top of your mini leagues or kind of wherever it is, and you're not doing it, it could break your season, couldn't it? I think that's my thoughts on why I would do it. But if you're not doing it and it pays off, then you're laughing, because people have used a transfer, they've got to make another one. But you're just gambling on James Maddison, who is we talked about last week, such a fantastic high quality player against a team in desperate form. But yeah, Arsenal and Chelsea on Tuesday. Martinelli is I think he's the highest owned Arsenal player now. Is that right?
Saka's right down now, and I can understand that because moves people made elsewhere, like to get Rashford back, a Liverpool defender. People had already started to move on to Brighton to get the volume of games. Again, you don't want to be coming back off those players. So I think Martinelli 63%. I thought it was 70%. Maybe people moved off him again. And Saka is the other obvious one, which I think he was down to like 25-30 the last time I looked. I will tell you just now. He's now at 29%.
Right, so that's almost your 100 then, and with the other sprinklings of potential other ones, don't see much transfer. You just captain who you've got on that one, right? Yeah. Would you bring in a player for that one?
No,
I think that's a different sort of game, isn't it?
I think it's going to be a low-scoring game.
Yeah, agree. Wednesday the 3rd, Man City, West Ham, Liverpool and Fulham. Got to be Haaland, regardless of who Liverpool are playing, yeah? Just a
For
beast.
Me, yeah, and I think Fulham haven't, like, I'm sure someone will pick up a game this season where they've conceded a few, but it feels like they've not been battered this season from anyone. Yeah. Really, like I can't off memory anyway, and that's not looking at the runs back previously. They've always been pretty tight. I know Tim Ream went off injured, and he's been really good this season against City. But
Andreas he went off as well, didn't he? I think.
Yeah, but even in the first half after Ream went off, Bernd Leno's had a really good season. He's been a really good signing for Fulham, non-fantasy related.
And Thursday then, Brighton and Man United. Is this
Interesting.
It is an interesting one, yeah, because Brighton's form is insane and Rashford's form is pretty insane. Chance to go different, maybe.
Stunk versus Rashford for me.
Yeah.
I think.
What's the passing stats like against Man United at the moment for teams who play against them at the moment?
It's hard to say because I only really trust the passing stats that relate to Brighton, Liverpool, and Man City anyway. But like teams, and possibly Arsenal, I would include in that bracket. Yeah, I'm not sure. Not sure.
I think I'm on Rashford at the moment.
I think Rashford would be the most popular.
Yeah, I think I'm on Rashford at the moment.
Regardless of it being at the Amex as opposed to Old Trafford.
Looking ahead then to next week on Saturday, no early game. We've got Wolves and Villa, Spurs and Palace, City and Leeds. Again, we get to see the lineups. Oh, do you know what? That is so nice, isn't it? Bournemouth and Chelsea, and then Liverpool and Brentford. Get to see the lineups, obviously, for City and Leeds, assuming again Haaland plays. If Haaland doesn't play, would it be
Salah.
Kane or Salah? Salah for you against Brentford?
I think
yeah,
so.
Same. Sunday the 7th, Newcastle and Arsenal. Strange times a few of these games are. Newcastle versus Arsenal, 4:30.
Coronation weekend.
Of course it is. And then West Ham United at 7:00. Yeah, interesting one there. Probably Rashford again for me.
Yeah, is there an opportunity to bring in a Newcastle? And again, this is the problem with bringing in the Newcastle player like Isak or Wilson. Like obviously you get to see who starts there, and it's a nice captaincy punt. But the fact that you don't know if that player then starts on any of either of the two singles that you would want to have the differential captain in further down the line. And we know that transfers are really sparse now.
And it may be right because both Isak and Wilson are, reasonably injury prone. Then by the time we get to that single game day on Thursday, the 18th of May, if one of them is injured, the other one's a fantastic pick. Yeah. And I think that's what I'd be looking at more. Even though they play Leeds away on Saturday the 13th, I would rather just wait and just see.
And I think this is why I was saying that for me, Newcastle is the wildcard team from now to the end of the season. Like that's where, if I was going for differentials, that's where I'd be focusing.
Monday the 8th then, Fulham and Leicester, Brighton and Everton, Forest, Southampton. Lewis Dunk, looking at it, is probably the obvious choice. He's probably going to get about 150 passes against Everton, you would guess. Obviously other Brighton's options there if you are having a punt. Let's have a look at a few questions. Tim Barry, with Man City against Leeds and Everton, which player is worth a punt? He reckons Haaland could get a rest soon, especially if Arsenal falter again. Fancy Alvarez or someone else. Any attacking assets, Paul?
The mall really, like Alvarez, Mahrez, Foden. Luke Williams is like probably the best person, and I include some of the professional accounts on Twitter at predicting the Man City team. I would be keeping a close eye to that. He's usually 10 or 11 out of 11 when he's guessing who's going to play, and he'll sometimes do one in advance. But he talks like I love his threads that he does on it, because he talks about what I mentioned earlier on there. Now I don't use that to try and predict them. I just use his predictions. But he's got that thing versus, yes, sometimes players will need a rest, but at the same time, Pep's about momentum. Yeah. So that's like Haaland wants to break every record. That comes into some of that thinking as well. I'm not steering anyone away from City attacking players. I think that any of them could go off at any point. Well, you've seen Mahrez, that was in the cup though, but he got the hat trick last weekend as well. So Mahrez, great option, great differential option. I think Foden will probably get more game time. Alvarez is a good shout as well. For me, bringing in those players, I don't know that I'd be wanting to get rid of any of the players that I think is going to play 5, 6, 7 games from now to the end of the season.
Exactly. So they've got 6 left, and with Foden back now, he'll probably give Grealish a bit of a rest. Ahead of Champions League, you've got Mahrez and Bernardo, and and stuff, kind of fighting on the other side and stuff. It's just such a hard one to call. I do. Looking at Gundogan, he's one I'm always interested in, but again, it's like around the Champions League games, especially if the league is won or practically close to being won. Is he really going to do it? So yeah, it's a tough one. And even then, if you do use your transfers, by Sunday the 21st of May, the Champions League semi-finals will have been played, and City will know if they're in the final or not. If they are in the final, I'm guessing they're the favourites. They've then got 3 games in 7 days. 3 of their remaining 6. Are they really going to play their strongest team in all those 3 if they already know they're in the final and they either won the league or close to win the league? I don't think they are. I think they're just going to rest some key players for the final. So,
yeah, I don't know. I think
trying to think logically.
I think all the City players are good, but I wouldn't be picking a player to play those 2 games or 3 games. I'd be picking a player to play 1 game, and if they get benched the next game, accept it and move on.
Yeah.
If Haaland's rested and you want a great differential punt on the day that you see the lineup,
yeah,
and that he's
that's
rested,
different. Yeah, obviously,
take a stab on one of them, and suck it up if they get benched the following week.
Yeah, that Saturday 6th of May home to Leeds could be one where you think, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. If Alvarez starts, I'm just going to go for Alvarez. Yeah, I agree with that. Glenroy says, Trippier, done out like forever. Do we sell?
I think you and I both made the argument. He has been pretty poor, like Sky Fantasy wise. I just don't know that. I don't know where I would move him on to, and I don't. They've still got volume of fixtures as well.
Yeah, I've got 5, haven't I? Yeah, we agree.
Rather than a few of the teams that have got 4. You know he's going to play every week. I imagine he doesn't pick up 5-2s like from now to the end of the season.
But he's also, for me, and this is why I brought him in. I was lucky I brought him in for the only time he did anything, which was against Man United when he got the 10-pointer, right? But he's an EO pick for me, effective ownership pick, because I just feel more comfortable having him in there, because I know there are people around me in the top 10 who have Newcastle defenders, have Trippier or have Pope, or Trippier and Pope. So for me, I just put him in there, and he's just a defensive move for me, and I'm quite happy to leave him in there.
You wouldn't do so if you were on 4-4-2 and you had the money to get Barnes or Maddison. You wouldn't move Trippier onto one of those and then hold them, knowing that you would cover the 2 singles because you've got the Leicester player against Newcastle.
Oh no!
And you've got a Brighton player against Newcastle as well.
Not for me. Not unless I was chasing. If I was chasing, I would do exactly that. If I wasn't chasing, I wouldn't. No way. Ultra Close says, I'm mapping out remaining moves. Do you think there's an advantage to holding one back to the 28th to try and get a differential, some sort of injury? Or is the optimal way to play just a dead-end team on 21st and get all the remaining 3-for-1s?
I mean, ideally, yes, you would, because at this stage, I think people are going to have like 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 City players come in the last day of the season. You just, like we've talked about, like, you don't know who City's going to play, so you'd have taken out a player potentially that doesn't play at all to fill with like a high upside differential. Absolutely. We just talked about the transfer averages there, and that was before the weekend.
It's going to be tough to hold them back, isn't it?
And then there's going to be moves tonight, and then, like you just said, that after this, Leicester assets probably aren't needed. So you come off the Leicester player potentially you've got tonight for the extra fixtures. You potentially come off the Arsenal player tomorrow with the extra fixtures.
Yeah.
So ideally, yes, but I don't know that reality is going to allow that for most managers.
Yep. Fair.
And I think the optimal play will be using them that weekend before, but I'm not really holding one back to the end.
Ian Parrin, question 2 parts. Has anything happened over the weekend put any doubt in your mind for future transfer plans? So we talked about that already. And how many contingency moves are you holding back, and when does this period come to a close? That's a good question. We just kind of touched on that there, haven't we? So if if you say the average looks if it's between 5 and 6 now, and we know that lots of people have will have likely have made a transfer, it's probably between maybe 4.5 and 5.5, say. So say an average of maybe 5 left across the board. How many of those would you hold back for like emergencies, or have you got yours all mapped out?
I've got multiple like things written down of notes of which I could do on certain days. I, this is like I said this on previous pods at the end of seasons before. If a player gets an injury now, there's a likelihood that the player gets ruled out for the rest of the
Yeah,
season.
that's right. Yeah,
More so than obviously more so than earlier on the season because you've got more of the season to go. But it feels like that period of time as well. Don't like why rush them back for the last day of the season and risk aggregating something because there's probably going to be very little to play for. Maybe on the relegation side, but nobody's looking at those players anyway on the last day of the season. So have some loose plans. Look at when the hop-on points exist where you get the extra fixtures. Brighton, say that there's two, like the Newcastle, there's 3 hop-on points for Newcastle on each of the game days, but if you're going to try and use that player for the future ones, I don't know that that's optimal either. Have some rough plans, but I think that have them all stored as contingency. Like not all, like 2 or 3 contingency transfers makes sense, I think.
I think looking at my team very, very roughly, I think I've probably got about 2 left. And that's not including kind of using them on the 21st either. That's just 2 left going into that period. And as you say, just kind of looseish plans around then. But it's very rough. It's very tight, isn't it? It's hard now. It's funny because a few weeks ago we were like, where are we going to spend all these transfers? And all of a sudden it's like, they're so easily spent, aren't they? And it's all very well. Like to your point, you're absolutely right. So say like Brighton have got 7 games in 24 days, right? If a player pulls an hamstring, he got no games.
And they've just proved that they can rotate. They just won 6-0.
Exactly.
It's Glenn, who was absolutely incredible. Undav, who, if you want to get the guy some confidence going into next season because you think that he's going to be a player, then he's going to get some more minutes. They've got like McAllister. This is one of those weird ones where I'm pretty certain that he's going to get transferred in the summer. Right? There's so many big clubs looking at him. It's not just one club producing him. Like if I was De Zerbi and I wanted to give game time to my other players, am I really going to play him for the next 7 games?
Exactly.
Like probably not. So yeah, it's interesting. Like I said earlier on, I'm thinking of like the games where I can look to make the most of, and the Haaland, if he plays all City's games, it's the peripheral players that are going to make up the points, not the player that you're captaining. And like bar a couple of days, and most of the other days have what I would say is a relatively obvious captain as well. There's just a couple more, and you know that based on their ownership and people's tendency that they're going to probably captain those players as well.
Okay, we haven't got a lot of time left, so I'm going to try and rattle through a few of these questions. Anyone to do with transfers? We've transfer category remaining. We've definitely answered all those. Andrew Lee says, forgot to take Ray out yesterday. Would you go De Gea or Edison now or someone else? So Steele, you reckon now? Yeah, Steele. Yeah, answers that one. Brookie says about Alvarez worth a look if you're looking for a cheeky differential, especially with the KDB injury. Well, you get to your lineups, don't you, for the next 2?
Yeah,
I think.
But if you're bringing them in, then I just feel like you're probably going to transfer them out again. So
there is that. Yeah, you're right. But that Leeds game could be incredible. Like City could batter Leeds like 8 or 9-0, and it only takes one game like that off an hour. It could be a season changer. But yeah, you are right. You're probably not going to leave him in you unless Haaland gets injured.
And you're going to be taking out a player that's not played yet because they're the first team to play that game week. And therefore, if you're trying to preempt it by bringing them on Wednesday, there's no guarantee starts on Saturday.
Dale asks about best differential for gaining rank and closing the gap. So we talked about probably Alvarez is maybe one of those. I do think wait until the end of this to kind of roughly the end of the season, I said, to see whether Wilson or Isaac is preferred or they've settled into a thing or one of them's injured. I do think that is a pretty decent sort of plan as well. Anyone else at all from like a differential view, looking at the teams with most fixtures. Man United have got, they're going to have 6 left from Thursday. Anyone from United at all?
Somebody asked a question about Shaw, whose passing stats are up. Every time he feels like one of those ones that every time anyone gets him, that like something bad happens. Bruno, obviously from Man United, he will play every game, so it's another shout. I'm not. I don't know that there's anybody that says what we're classing as differential now, because some of those Brighton players are still under kind of 15% owned, and even though they're talked about quite a lot, like Mitoma and such like, I imagine if he goes on one of like that purple patch that he had earlier on the season, that he would be a good shout again.
Yeah. Just looking at the rest of the questions, I think we've answered pretty much most of them, actually. A lot of them around kind of Man City defenders, best ones, whether to come off Trippier. Good idea maybe off Julian. He says, would you go from Trippier to maybe someone like a Kanji and then return for Isaac or Wilson on the 18th, which is not a bad shout. I suppose you could maybe do that, but they have got similar. Well, they've got the exact same fixture count in that time, which is 3. So I'm just not sure. I just think with such limited transfers now, that to me sounds a bit of a luxury for
or a chasing move. If
or a chasing move. You're right. You are right. Yeah.
If you accept the fact that you'll slide if it doesn't come off, but if you're looking for something to go
exactly
to really push on, then yeah.
So a quick look at the leagues before we go. The overall leaderboard: 10th place, Darren Taylor 3122, Nathan Iodwick 3126, Jirong Tang 3130, John Donnelly in 7th 3133, John Ashworth in 6th 3134. David Baxter in 5th, 3144. I'm 4th on 3144 as well. What's the difference, Paul, with because I'm 4th and David's 5th, but with joint points? Is there like a differentiator there? We'll have to check that actually.
I don't know how they split the money. I always thought it was like if you finished in a money place, I don't know, but I always thought it was to do with your last game week, and I can't remember if you had a better last game week or you had the worst last game week. I thought that was the way that they separated the positions. I'm not 100% sure though.
Not to do with just like looks then, no.
Could be alphabetical order on both.
Could be. You're right. Yeah.
On either forename or team name. I don't know.
3rd, Paul McAnulty 3157. 2nd, Dale Pointer 3161. And top of the shop, Paul McAnulty with a current 16-point lead 3177. But incredibly tight.
Neil Pointer finished 25th last season as well, so he's a really good player.
Absolutely, flipping heck, 25th and a chance for the big one this week. That is pretty superb. Jason in the chat, interesting one actually. I hadn't really thought of this, but Estupinian potentially a good alternative for trips in terms of like fixture volume. He's very attacking, isn't he? My goodness, he looks really dangerous.
There was one question I'll answer very, very quickly that came through, and it was about offsetting things. Dan Cox used to talk about a lot about this. Like if he didn't own a player from a team, he would always back them to do a clean sheet. And I think the example someone gave was, if I didn't own Maddison tonight, would I put £500 on? If it was a straight shootout that I knew that Maddison would win me or cost me the game overall, then absolutely I would do something like that. But it's one of probably 50 decisions that still need made between now and the end of the season. I mean, I sometimes do like what Dan used to do, like put £20 on a clean sheet or not, or a team you concede or whatever balance, if there was fair odds on it, if I felt that it was going to make me feel better by offsetting on a day or not.
On the final day, 2 seasons ago on Dream Team, I laid out a grand in the Chelsea game, and it all lost, but it didn't matter in the end. I'm glad it lost. I'm glad they all lost. If they had won, I'd have won a few grand, but obviously I would have lost the big one. So yeah. Home Nations League, Liam's team's 2947 in 6th. Dan Cox 2955 in 5th, Ian Parry 3051 in 4th, and then our 3 teams at the top again, and the FFH Members League. Aaron Alton, who finished I think 4th or 5th a couple of seasons ago, 3097. Keir McKenna, great player, 3099. Brian McCauley up into the top 10. Well done, Brian, 3101. Shane White, superb player, 3106. Mark Wisdish, 3111. Last season's winner. Dean Hicks, fabulous player, 3112. Niall, fabulous player, 3113. Dave Baxter, 3144, myself 3144, and Dale 3161. So the top three have taken a real lead there. Nearly, was it a 31-point lead? Well done, everyone, and the FFH Members League. And that is it for us for this week. We're about to record the Dream Team Tonic podcast with the Dream Team Tonic guys. So if you do play Sun Dream Team, make sure you're listening this week. Paul and I are on it.
I feel like an imposter going on this.
I'm
not even that good at Dream Team.
You're not very good at this. You're just lucky. As usual, thank you all so much for watching and listening. Your continued support is much, much appreciated. Thank you so much, Paul. Where can people find you?
On Twitter at Paul McAnulty1, MCANULTY. I am still in that position where I'm struggling to get back to people, and I've been making my transfers and then turning my phone off, and I've been making transfers or captaincy calls on game days as well.
My handle on Twitter is at FFH_Fergi. If you like what you watched, please press the like button and remember to subscribe in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast versions. Leave some comments. It would be much, much appreciated. We'll be back next week. Looking ahead, what will it be? Game week 41. Have a great week and weekend all. And goodbye for now.